G'day, I'm here to explain the academic guidelines and expectations to you, just in case you didn't catch on all the things I mentioned in the formal presentation, or indeed if you're away. So in front of you what you should have is a number of documents. This is the one I'll be referring to, and I want you to read with me as I go through. There's other documents like the Authenticity and Academic Integrity Guide. You've got that, a physical copy of that, and you've also got a copy of the Student Acknowledgement, and I'll refer to these throughout my presentation as I'm going along. Okay, let's start with attendance. That's on page 1. Obviously you've got to be punctual. If you're 5 minutes late, then there's a few things that might occur. In the first instance, if you are more than 5 minutes late, you should sign in at the Dean's office. That should be obvious to you already. Now, if this is a start of a trend, and that trend might be 2 lessons that you miss or a little bit late, more than 5 minutes late, you will get a formal notice from your teacher. And these absences are without cause. So if this is an ongoing thing, the teacher will then ask the TQA Coordinator to come in, deal in a more formal sense to ensure that these things don't occur. You've got to remember that these courses that you're studying are all 150-hour nominal study time. If you miss time, then in some instances teachers cannot give you a full assessment if you don't turn up the required amount of hours. So the second thing on page 1, we've got to talk about change of subject procedure. Now that will happen, or can only happen, before week 6, because if you miss more than 5 weeks, even 5 weeks of your TCE subject will be quite a lot of work to miss, and in order then to make it up. You must collect a subject change form from the Dean's office, then make an appointment to see Mr. Dudgeon to talk about your choices, discuss the changes. You need to complete both sides and gain signatures from various people like your parents, your teachers, and your househead. That must be then returned to the Dean's office, and you can't start into a new subject and once it's been processed and you have received a yellow slip. Now that's really important. So you can't enter a new class until you've got the yellow slip and the new timetable, and in that time obviously the teacher will be advised as well. Study lines. Most students will have one of those. The grade 11s, they will go to the AM green room, they're expected to turn up all the time. The grade 12s are in H1, but they also have some privileges, and if it is abused, then obviously that privilege will be withdrawn. I beg your pardon. So if you desire to miss period 1 and 2 on a regular basis, you need to seek a permission form. Now some students do that. I would advise that you get into a routine and come to school the same day, same time every day, but the opportunity is there to come in at 10:30. Obviously you need to fill out a permission form from the Dean's office, and if you come in early you need to sign in, and if you go out late, and that is for periods 6 and 7 if you have a study line, then you obviously must sign out. Attendance is really important. Let's look at the academic integrity. Now this document must be read in conjunction with another document that you've got in front of you. This document looks a bit like this one. I've got this one off the net obviously, and it's also you can see it here on the Go247 site, so you can access it from there if you wish. Now the teacher will help you with the academic integrity and authenticity in each individual subject, but the long and short of it is it must be your own work. And there's various things that teachers go through in order to ensure that. There are different requirements, but they're all in the TQA guides, and one check that teachers use is asked students to turn themselves in, as it were, or their work, more to the point, to ensure that there is minimum plagiarism. Now this plagiarism check, or the score from Turn It In, must be submitted in with your assignment, or alternatively the teacher can refer to it and just give you advice whether you've reached their required benchmark. My required benchmark is around about the 10 to 15% mark. Now, as part of all this, you must sign a formal document, and it looks like you have it in front of you. You must have read 3 documents. You can see them there: the academic guidelines, the authenticity and academic integrity guide, how to reference other people's work. So the agreement is that you've read all these documents, that you abide by the expectations, and importantly that all your work is your own. Right? And you must obviously sign that, your parents or your guardian, and they must be returned to Mrs. Viney. There's a whole lot of expectations that you must meet. There's not to be any plagiarism. I think that's pretty obvious by now. And of course you must meet deadlines. If deadlines aren't met, it may mean that some assessments won't count, or in some instances you may receive penalties for one or more criteria, and that varies from teacher to teacher, from subject to subject. So when you receive a bigger accessible piece of work, an assignment, an inquiry, or in some instances a folio, teachers must do the following for you. Obviously they must describe what it's all about, the length in terms of words or other requirements, what criteria will be assessed. Some teachers will be able to give you standards or rubrics straight away or at the end, but any TQA subject has got the standards set on the TQA site, where you can find that quite easily. It obviously must give you when it's due, and there may be some intermediate deadlines as well, so that is all found on that assignment sheet. And also information about how to apply for an extension, and this is on the Go247 site, which I can show you. So on the Go247 site, it's going to look a bit different by the time you see it, but down the bottom here, TQA and LCS forms, and that one there is a extension form that you must formally fill in and request an extension after discussing that with your teacher. There's information again on the TQA site. I've got that stored up here on the Go247 site for you, or you can go directly to the TQA if you wish. And this is the important thing, the due date. It will vary from subject to subject, but these are set in concrete. But what about if you're sick or have got an injury or something? Now these guidelines, as well as how to submit a folio and other bits and pieces, can be found again on the TQA site, and this is the extension. If you happen to be sick, and obviously you need a medical certificate there. And on the Go247 site, I've got some sites up here, as well as some forms that you can access. So if you've got any problems, you should go and see the TQA Coordinator. There's a declaration form that you'll receive towards the end that you must sign, and your teacher must sign. It's all within your subject guidelines, and as I said earlier, they're all going to be different. And it is there to ensure that what you produce is your own work, as I've mentioned already. And for that to happen, you must declare that in terms of a signature, and your teacher must do that also. They must be satisfied, and there's various procedures in place in order for that to happen, that what you produce is your own, and you haven't copied or plagiarised anybody else's work. The procedures are generally the same. We've got our first exams in June, and then another lot in September. That's what we call the trial exams. But what about if you happen to be sick? There's procedures which work the same internally in grammar and externally for the end of the year. You must have a medical certificate, and I will talk to you a bit more about that later on in the year in relation to external exam. But these things must happen on the day that you're sick. Talking about illness and misadventure, the principle that is applied here is that we have the no disadvantage principle. So if you're sick or if you're injured or something else, is that we want to ensure that you are not disadvantaged by that, and it's your ability to pass this exam which is important. So in that instance, if you need any advice, talk to your teachers, tutor or house head. It must always be supported with a medical certificate. And again, it's got to be. This leads me to talk about special considerations. Now, you can get special considerations for a number of reasons: learning difficulties, illness, misadventure, physical factors, or emotional factors. With all of these, there's a formal procedure that you must go through with your TQA Coordinator. And you may apply for any of these things: extra time, a computer, you may need a scribe, you may need a reader, and there's other considerations as well. And they're all outlined in your document on page 4, and there's also information on the TQA site. I've got these bookmarked on the Go247 site, and here are all the ins and outs, and you can read that a bit more closely, but these are the sort of things that you'll be discussing with the TQA Coordinator. All this must be done by the end of term 2. Now, this is a long drawn out process. Your application must be supported with sometimes a medical certificate, a psychologist's report, and a whole lot of things. So you should apply now, so we can get this over and done with way before the end of term 2. That will be my thinking. Now, in a lot of instances, you may not be satisfied with your marks that have been given by a teacher, but this is must be done through a formal request, and that request must be done within 7 days of you receiving your assessment. Now, if you're not satisfied with what the teacher will go through, then you can come and see the TQA Coordinator. Now, the TQA Coordinator will ensure that the processes are followed rigorously, and strictly speaking, you have got 2 avenues of appeal. It's important that that when you make this formal request, you do it within 7 days, as I mentioned, that you should refer to the subject syllabus guidelines and standards, and you should make a request usually in less than 100 words. But the TQA Coordinator will know about this and oversee this process in the first instance with your teacher, and then in the second instance in the final appeal. Absences. So if you're absent for a test, you should make an arrangement with the teacher as quickly as possible, as soon as after the official test date was set, in order to get that over and done with. There are a series of retests, and it varies from subject to subject, but these usually happen in term 3 and term 4, and you would be given every opportunity to try and increase your marks. There's a formal retesting session usually in October as well. It's right near the end, just before exams, and that coincides with your internal ratings. Now, the official time here is that you must receive your internal ratings by week 3 in term 4. Now, a lot of teachers will have given you earlier feedback. That will be to ensure you get your best possible ratings that you can get here at Grammar. Another thing that's a strong point here is that you can get access to tutoring and support. This is outside of what your classroom teacher would provide you. This is after school, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday from 3:45 to 5:15, and you can get extra support and tutoring if you need it. One final thing, that's the results. Now results will come out in usually about the middle of December, and that will be posted to you. But if you can't wait, you can apply to get your results emailed to you, and I'll discuss that with you towards the end of the year when we do our exam environment. Okay, just a few last things. This is on page 6. School reports will be issued term 1 and term 3. Parent-teacher interviews will be conducted in between those. If you have any questions, you should always come and see me, email me, or use Yammer on the TQA Go 247 site. It's obviously going to look different by the time you get to see it, but there's lots of things that I will be communicating to the general student body about, and you can do the same, and do the same with me. Hopefully that's been of use to you. If there's any gaps that I haven't been able to fill in for you, you should see me, use Yammer year. Thanks for